Harry, let's begin with you. I'm curious what your take is on yesterday's hearings. Obviously, we've had blockbuster revelations coming out about Mike Pence, about the president. But what was your big takeaway from yesterday?
All these were blockbuster, and again, a very big scheme, and Trump knows about it. Trump knows it's unlawful. For me, though, Joe, the takeaway was all this stuff throughout the country. We've had these set pieces in Washington, D.C. We will return to them tomorrow. But here you saw the actual effect on human lives of the despicable personal qualities of Trump and his minions. Before things have been analogized to a criminal syndicate, this was an actual criminal syndicate with mobs and thugs ready to enforce his will. So all in all, the way it affects the country, the sort of good, bad, and ugly of people standing up and calmly telling the truth, and for that facing the wrath of Trump and untold thousands of frenzied supporters. That's what really drove home to me where we are in the country, not just in Washington.
Kurt Bardella, your take on yesterday's hearing.
Well, Joe, I think that one of the things that stood out to me in all of these proceedings is how seamless this process has been, how choreographed it's been, and what a huge strategic error Kevin McCarthy made by not seating any of his Republican members, allowing Republicans to basically sit this entire thing out. Imagine how different all four of these hearings would have been if you had had the Jim Jordans, the Matt Gaetzes, the typical 5-minute volley back and forth between majority and minority, the Republicans trying to disrupt, distract, take away from the hearing, introduce new narratives, false conspiracy theories, all the things we normally see during normal proceedings like we saw with the confirmation hearings. That's not part of this. We're able to get a full, complete, seamless story from start to finish without any interruption, without any chaos, without any nonsense. And it is a powerful way to present what's going on for the American people. And it was just a massive blunder by Kevin McCarthy to not seat any of his members in this proceeding. I can't believe that he did this. Trump is out of his mind watching this. He can't understand why Kevin did it. It may cost him the speakership down the line.
Hey, Al, yes, to Kurt's point, we have a new interview from the former president this morning expressing his real displeasure that there aren't Republicans on that committee who can defend him. But as we've been saying all morning, yesterday, I'd argue the most powerful of the hearings yet, because it came from this testimony from those who were the subjects who were of these threats, particularly Ms. Moss and her mother there in Georgia. It does seem like each hearing is topping the one before. We've got another one tomorrow. What's on tap there?
Yeah, another one tomorrow focusing on the pressure campaign inside the Department of Justice with key officials that were part of those conversations, including the acting Attorney General at the time, as well as his deputies. They can speak to the mindset of the former president as he was trying to install allies atop the Department of Justice. Of course, it makes Congresswoman Liz Cheney's plea that Pat Cipollone, the White House counsel, he should come forward. They've had some conversations with him, our sources tell us, but at the same time, they would like to hear from him in a meaningful way in these hearings. I asked her yesterday, as she was leaving the hearing, if it left too many gaps, if they could continue forward on the hearing schedule this next coming week because they still had people that they wanted to hear from. She said that they're going to continue the conversations with Cipollone, leaving the real meat and the crux of my question unanswered here, because what's always been true, Jonathan, is you and I have talked about this, the fact that they are laying out a public narrative while they are still learning new information. They are asking Ginny Thomas to come and talk to them. They have new footage now and conversations from Ivanka Trump because of that documentarian who was with the former president and his allies in the days and weeks before January 6th. They're getting a lot of new information, and the question is, how are they able to balance that, moving forward with public hearings, but also making sure that they have all of the information that they could possibly want. I will say, though, in terms of yesterday, the real moment for me was when Rudy Giuliani apparently said to them, in the context of trying to find these votes and find some way to bolster the conspiracy theories that they were coming up with, where he said that they had lots of theories, but they just don't have the evidence. I think that's pretty much the banner for what the Trump campaign strategy was in the aftermath of losing the election.
Harry, how important would it be to have Cipollone testify before the committee? What would you want to find out?
Well, he had repeated conversations where he said, this is unlawful, you can't do it, with Trump personally, so it really drives that home. I think, as in other instances, they do have it in equivalent form, but that was a high, hard one from Cheney at the end, calling him out directly. They know about conversations that they'll have to do secondhand. Cipollone would give it straight. Cipollone's a Barr guy, always has been, and just as Barr parted company with Trump at the end, Cipollone is a guy who can say in the flesh and blood, we knew, I'm the White House counsel, we knew this had no legal basis whatsoever.
Kurt Bardella, let's talk about the pacing of these hearings. I think it's fascinating that the committee is actually having to slow things down. They're getting so much information. I mean, you can talk about the political side of it. Every hearing seems to be a blockbuster hearing. There are headlines that could last a week. I think they've got a bigger issue, though, as far as pacing. And they're learning so much in these hearings. They've learned about this new documentary filmmaker who followed Donald Trump around January the 6th. They're trying to get more evidence to make sure they don't get out ahead of themselves. But the pacing, I take it that you agree with the pacing of these hearings, that it's better not to just keep it.
Let it breathe.
Yeah, let it breathe, not compress it so much that you miss some evidence, that the American public miss some evidence.
Yeah, we're seeing from this committee, and it's very refreshing, actually, in real time, making adjustments based on how this is playing out there with the American people, based on the information they're getting. I remember talking to people inside the committee before the hearing started, and they were prepared for the possibility that because what we were going to see was so compelling, that they would get an avalanche of people coming forward with more information, with new information, that these would extend beyond June. When they initially announced the hearings for June, they did so saying this is just the beginning. This is not the be-all, end-all. The investigation just doesn't end with the last hearing in June. And now what we're seeing is they understand, and they're learning from lessons from the past. During impeachment, remember, we had like 3 hearings a week, one after the other. Nothing was able to resonate. Nothing was able to sink in. They're not going to make that same mistake twice. They're going to space this out. They're going to let the information breathe. They're going to let the American people digest it, let the media absorb it, and let themselves have the time to put forward the best presentation possible. They are not going to rush this. And I think that the only thing I would change about yesterday, honestly, is I would have put it on prime time.
Former spokesperson for the House Oversight Committee, Kurt Bardella, thanks very much for being on this morning. And former U.S. Attorney and former Deputy Assistant Attorney General Harry Litman, thank you as well.